Anxiety amongst Chargers fans continues to grow as the Mike McDaniel saga continues. Does he really want to be head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Mike, where are you? We're looking for you. We want to see you put pen to paper and end all of the nonsense. We just want you to be our next offensive coordinator. And of course, what does that mean for his prospective head coaching opportunities? We only know of one that he may still be in the running for, and of course, that is the Las Vegas Raiders job. Is it better to be the Chargers offensive coordinator or the Raiders head coach? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the defensive coordinator search. We do know that the Chargers did interview Zach Orr for the Chargers defensive coordinator position.
Yeah, and if you ask Ravens fans, they would say, take him, please. So we'll get into that in the latest in the Chargers defensive coordinator search, including one of the guys they interviewed getting swooped up by John Harbaugh. But, David, 6 days into it now, as fans are listening to this show today, and the anxiety amongst them hasn't been quelled really at all, because the reporting has still been all over the place as far as Mike McDaniel being the Chargers offensive coordinator. And I think a lot of the hard part of this is you feel like you're just seeing people report things that you've already seen, and it's just different versions of the same thing because the Chargers fan base is so ravenous and quick to engage in all of these posts that it just makes it hard to tell what's what. So we're going to get into all the latest today and talk about the fact that, I mean, at least in my opinion, I'm still feeling pretty good about Mike McDaniel becoming the Chargers offensive coordinator. But what is taking so long? What does he get leverage-wise out of taking as long as he is taking right now? Because, David, like I said, we're 6 days into this thing. And yes, we knew it was going to be unless he got a head coaching position. But, man, it feels like some of these fans are already starting to sour on their potential new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think it's just frustration, right? It's just, this is such an unprecedented situation for everybody out there. All of the big name, media members in the NFL putting out that the Chargers are expected to, sign Mike McDaniel. He's supposed to join as the offensive coordinator. We've seen it from this person and that person and everybody else. But here we are still waiting for pen to be put to paper, because there's always been that caveat, unless he gets a head coaching opportunity, one that he obviously would prefer. So it's just one of those situations where I don't remember another time where they put out reports saying, hey, he's going to take the job, and then it ends up having to be another waiting period. It's just a very, very weird situation, Dan.
Yeah, I can't remember one like it. I mean, obviously, like, the thing is still is the Chargers haven't been interviewing anyone, right? So they're still under the assumption that he is going to be their guy. And if they had started kind of opening things back up again, I think it would be added reason for concern. But, like, this is the thing. Mike McDaniel hasn't taken the Chargers offensive coordinator job yet, which by all reports, if he does take an OC job, it will be the Chargers one. At the same time, it doesn't really feel like he wants any of the other jobs. I mean, he pulled out the day it was announced he was going to be the Chargers OC. He pulled out of the Cleveland Browns head coaching search. Wasn't the only one to do that. Good job, Tom Telesco over there. But after that, right, it was the Friday last week. Oh, hey, Mike McDaniel meeting with the Bills today to potentially be their head coach. Then it comes out after that, after all of Chargers fans are just going crazy for an entire day. Oh, actually, he didn't meet with them. He pulled out. So you don't want the Browns job. You don't want the Bills job. And then Ian Rappaport reports on Sunday, still in the mix for the Las Vegas Raiders head coaching job is Mike McDaniel, who's expected to be the Chargers offensive coordinator, assuming he doesn't get a head coaching job. Even after, earlier that day, Jeremy Fowler had said Raiders coaching search continues and could come into focus after Sunday. Multiple league sources consider Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak a prime candidate after a strong first interview. Broncos pass game coordinator Davis Webb is often mentioned in league circles as a viable option too. So he's still in the mix, but everyone talking about the top, options for the Raiders, Mike McDaniel doesn't even come up. You have Diana Rossini on Saturday saying Mike McDaniel is still expected to become the Chargers offensive coordinator, though no contract has been signed yet per sources. We've heard all these things. But at the same time, it's like, are we actually going to see Mike McDaniel go interview again for the Raiders job? Because we haven't seen that either. They just had Joe Brady in for his second interview. But I do think that this week, things will come into focus a little bit more because now there are more guys that are able to be interviewed for the Raiders job, for the Bills job. I do think we could start seeing things heat up.
Yeah, things are definitely going to start to move. Basically, I know the rules for coaches that are still in it. You had to have already conducted an initial interview with that coach beforehand. If not, then you have to wait basically until after the Super Bowl to really do anything. But if they're eliminated, then they're free reign. You can talk to anybody. And obviously the big names from the coaches that have been eliminated are coming from the Denver Broncos, namely Davis Webb, the quarterback's coach. And it, by reports, it does indicate that the Raiders are going to be meeting with Davis Webb early this week. So we'll see what that looks like. Hopefully, that means that we'll get some more clarity because obviously there's still a couple of jobs out there that need to be filled. But yeah, I mean, of all of the people that are saying anything about this head coaching position, Mike McDaniel is not really named or listed as one of the names on the top of the list. So I think that is encouraging, at least from that perspective, is, he's not being put out there and, hey, you saw what, the Seattle Seahawks did, right? And, they won that game. Clinton Kubiak, obviously, a big hot name in that coordinator search. And, they have already spoken to him before, so they can speak with him again. They just can't make an official hire. So things are definitely going to start moving. Hopefully that means we are getting closer and closer to a resolution to this very agonizing saga.
At this point, I'm assuming at some point I'm going to see someone report, hey, Mike McDaniel is going to meet with the Raiders on Tuesday and then have him pull out of it at the last second. It just makes you wonder, what is kind of the leverage play right now? Like, maybe he truly thinks he's still in the mix with the Raiders, and maybe the Raiders have told him he's very much in the mix there. I've seen reports that they want to go offensive-minded. The problem is they can't officially sign Clint Kubiak, who, out of all of the, guys that are still out there, seems like clear and far away the best option, right now. Do the Bills want him? Because I think, as I remember, the Bills didn't interview him already and didn't have that chance, so they won't be able to interview him in person again at all until after the Super Bowl at this point. So will the Raiders be patient and hold out for Clint Kubiak? Is it a two-team race for Clint Kubiak? Just because that feels like really the only way I would get concerned is if Clint Kubiak goes to the Bills, if the Raiders don't move on in Davis Webb this week, the Broncos pass game coordinator, do the Raiders get desperate and not want to wait, right, and then go to another option? Maybe that's Mike McDaniel. But even then, it doesn't even feel like Mike McDaniel might be a top two option, because also you have someone like a Chris Shula out there right now available, Rams defensive coordinator. He could bring Nate Scheelhaus in as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
If they wanted to go kind of the Jesse Minter, Mike McDonald direction, get a defensive guy, and then, have an offensive mind underneath him. But at this point, the Raiders also just had second interviews with Joe Brady. They had an in-person interview with Brian Daboll. We know they also like Davis Webb. Webb is someone they could sign now, so that's why I do think things will start to move more quickly. But David, just until then, there's just going to be no peace of mind at this point until the Chargers just announce this is our new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, if I see another report that says that he's still expected to be the Chargers offensive coordinator, but he hasn't signed in some way, shape, or form, I might start looking at trying to pull my hair out, because it is a very frustrating situation. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not overly concerned with it at this point because of the fact that the Chargers haven't brought anybody else in, so that does give me some peace of mind. But like other fans out there, it is extremely frustrating and very annoying because you get really excited, you get really hyped up, and you think man, this offense is going to be great. They have somebody who is at the height of innovation running this offense for the Chargers, and it just hasn't happened yet. Until it does happen, I think there's going to be some people out there that are going to have some higher stress levels than they should.
And at this point, the thing is everything is still the same as when we first heard it, right? Mike McDaniel will be the Chargers offensive coordinator unless he gets a head coaching job. Do the Raiders actually want him? Does he want the Raiders? Is being the Raiders head coach better than being the Chargers head coach? Because at this point, there's 4 openings left: the Cardinals, the Browns, the Bills, and the Raiders. He's already pulled out of 2 of them and has no connection to the Arizona Cardinals. So it's only the Raiders. Is that a better job? Even if they do offer you the head coaching position, we're going to break it all down and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching games even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs, and Prize Picks is incredibly easy to use to get started. Just pick 2 or more players and choose more or less on their projections, and you hit that, you win. They already have some projections out for the big game, and you could do it just like this. I mean, I'm going to be rooting for the Seahawks for sure. So I'm going to say Sam Darnold to throw more than or less than 230.5 passing yards, and pair that with Jackson Smith-Njigba getting more than or less than 91.5 receiving yards. That's it, and you can go more than that. You can go with sacks projections as well. There's so much on Prize Picks. I love being able to mix the stars from different teams and build lineups that fit how you watch the game. And the biggest game of them all is coming up. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. David, all of this, conjecture about where Mike McDaniel is going to go and why he's still kind of holding out hope and why he would even want the job that he's, being targeted by at this point, or at least being linked to at this point, and that is the Raiders job. So I thought today we could go through and talk about whether that even is a better job, because I think there is a good argument for the Chargers being a better job, even if it's just an offensive coordinator position. But let's take a look at both sides here, and let's start with the Raiders side, because it's not as if the Raiders don't have an attractive situation, but obviously you're only kind of as good as your ownership to a certain extent, and that plays a big factor in it too. But I do think they do have a pitch to sell to, prospective offensive coordinators.
Yeah, of course they do. And I think you look at it and you look at, first and foremost, the weapons that they have available, the young weapons, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, a couple of guys you feel really good about building an offense around for sure. They have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. So obviously they need a quarterback. Feels very obvious that they're probably going to take a quarterback. Fernando Mendoza, by all accounts, seems like he's going to be that guy. And they have a lot of money to work with as well. $81 million in cap space, reportedly from over the cap for 2026. So plenty of money to spend. They got a couple of weapons to work around and a first overall pick to be able to utilize to try to rebuild this Raiders franchise.
Yeah, and it does feel that way, right? And I do think that getting a first round pick, getting a young quarterback sometimes can buy you some of that leeway, especially early on as a coach, where it's like, hey, you can't expect me to do really great in this situation with this quarterback. Now, I think Pete Carroll probably thought he would have more leeway too. He's a legendary coach, a national champion, and a Super Bowl champion. He got 1 year, and that has to play a factor in this job as well. The fact that the Raiders have had, this will be their 6th coach since 2021. That's crazy. Wow. That isn't Baltimore, that isn't the Pittsburgh Steelers. This isn't a place that you're, known to be lenient. And if you're Mike McDaniel, right, you might not get another bite at the apple. You might not get that third chance. There's a reason why people were so surprised about Mike McCarthy being the Steelers head coach, is just because you don't usually get 3 opportunities, right? And this one, if this one crashes and burns with Mike McDaniel, he might not ever get a head coaching position again. Yeah. Period, point blank. Now, Brock Bowers, special talent. Already shown he's one of the best tight ends in the league when he's healthy. Ashton Genty could be great, but it's hard to say at this point just because of that season, right? After that, these are their wide receivers. These are their best wide receivers. Jack Besh, Trey Tucker, and Dante Thornton. right?
Who?
The offensive line they had, I know I'm throwing stones from a glass house here, but it wasn't great there either. I mean, 22nd in pass blocking win rate and run blocking win rate last year, 28th in pass blocking grade per PFF, 30th in run blocking grade. So
not much hope on the horizon either.
No, they have Colton Miller, who's good. You know, Jackson Powers Johnson, obviously a guy we were high on and didn't get along with the last regime. Maybe they find something there, but still not that much closer. Defensively, you have Max Crosby, one of the best edge defenders in the league. But that's it, man. That's like the only piece they have on their defense. Like Jeremy Chin, there's just really not much else. So, like, are you sure you're going to get the leeway with that rookie quarterback, right? The other part of it is, like, Mike McDaniel's problems were never with play calling or the offense, right? No. It was about no accountability. It was about guys missing meetings and other teammates being like, why is this allowed? That is something that could be fixed, I think, or at least you could be shown the light with somewhere like under Jim Harbaugh, right? Yeah. See how a CEO does it. See what it's like to be the head man, because we know that you can call plays, and that is, I think, where you kind of, one of the main things when you're talking about why the Chargers job could be more attractive is like, hey, get back to what you're doing. Call plays, because we know you're an elite level play caller.
Absolutely. And you don't have to have all the stress of having to be the guy that oversees the entire operation, right? You have Jim Harbaugh to do that. He's done it at an extremely high level at multiple levels of football. There's absolutely nothing to worry about there. So for the Chargers side, obviously, first and foremost, it's Justin Herbert, elite quarterback that you have to be able to, coordinate in the prime of his career. On the offensive side, lots of weapons, lots of young weapons. Lab McConkey, Quinn Johnston, Aronde Gadsden, Trey Harris, Amarion Hampton, all guys that you feel like these guys have skill sets that are going to be part of what the Chargers do in the future on offense. Offensive line, obviously nothing that was very remarkable from this past year other than Joe Alt, who left early, and Rashawn Slater, who hopefully will come back from injury and be as close to the Rashawn Slater that we know and love. If he is close to that, that means you have two all-pro level tackles to be able to work with. And, oh, by the way, the Chargers have, if they make a few cuts, about $100 million in cap space. So they have the better quarterback situation. Oh, yeah, and, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a much better defense, a much more ready-to-go defense, a lot more guys at each level of the defense that you feel like are players that you can build around and continue to have a much better level of sustained success with than the Raiders have on their side. So Chargers have a lot to work with. They have a lot of opportunity here for Mike McDaniel to remake his image and go out there and succeed with an offense that has a quarterback and weapons to hit the ground running right away. And if he does, he can parlay that into his next head coaching opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, right now it doesn't even feel like he'd be landing one of the top 3 jobs in the cycle, right? Like, if you look at next year potentially when, Todd Bowles might not get another shot if he can't get it going again. Like, there's going to be more openings. There's going to be more opportunities. You know who else is going to be on the hot seat? Zach Taylor. You can have a chance to take over Joe Burrow next year potentially, right? Like, there's going to be plenty of other guys and plenty of better potential opportunities when your stock really isn't at an all-time low. Like, we're not coming off of the 2 elite in the league in passing yard season, right? We're coming off of 2 dysfunctional seasons where Tua completely devolved into, what he was when he got benched near the end of the season. And I just think that, yes, like, you have to replace the entirety of the interior offensive line. But besides that, with all the cap space that you have, with the chance to kind of be the hottest name in 2026 and give yourself more options rather than just kind of, making yourself, have to go for one with the Raiders, which is arguably good. And a lot of that really just depends on how much you think of Fernando Mendoza. Like, if you think he can be the savior of that franchise, because, man, even if he's great, it's not going to be a one-year thing. Like, the Chargers offense is ready to go and be great right now. Like, that's what they have available. Like, you could have that offense now. You have the guys coming back. You have the depth on the offense. You really just have to kind of figure out that one thing in the offensive line. And we've seen Mike McDaniel make it work with lesser offensive lines in Miami. Yeah, I think the Chargers offensive coordinator job is the better job. And I don't necessarily think it's that close, because it's like some franchises are just dumpster fire franchises, and you can put the Raiders right there and put my name on it, because I don't see it getting good anytime soon, and it hasn't been good in a very long time. But we still have more to get into, because the Chargers are also actively in a defensive coordinator search right now as they look for who's going to replace Jesse Minter. And Zach Orr, the former Ravens defensive coordinator, has interviewed for the job. So we're going to talk about that and a couple of playoff lessons on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I mean, there's so many times where you can just put a job post out and you're like, man, is anyone seeing this? Or, like, more importantly, are the right people seeing this? And that's not something you have to worry about with Indeed sponsored jobs, because it boosts your post to people who are the best match for your role, and it makes a real difference. According to the Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners to this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now to support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Dave, we still have more to get into, because obviously we've been very caught up with the offensive coordinator saga with Mike McDaniel, because this is the risk that comes along with getting the hottest name on the market, right? But we haven't really talked as much about the defensive coordinator job just in general, because late last week Jesse Minter got hired, and we're still dealing with the offense side of the ball. But the Chargers have moved quickly to try to, make up some of the ground that they lost by having to wait until Jesse Minter found that next job. And we've seen them move quickly, interviewing through 3 different guys up till this point. Last week we talked about the Rams defensive passing game coordinator, and this I'll be present. This week, we're going to talk about Zach Orr, who is the Ravens' former defensive coordinator. And as soon as they put the post out, it was just like all these Ravens fans, yeah, take him. Good luck, blah, blah, blah. But still, David, shows the Chargers, after having this interview with John Harbaugh's last defensive coordinator, are showing that they want to stick to those kind of Jesse Minter, Mike McDaniel roots. And this is a guy that has a chance to get the job.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like I say, you've already, you spent the last couple of years laying down the framework of what this defense is. You've seen it be extremely successful in the NFL, and obviously one of those guys that is on that tree is going to be playing in the Super Bowl, is going to be orchestrating his team in the Super Bowl, obviously with Mike McDaniel and the Seattle Seahawks. So it has been a very successful scheme. Obviously, Jesse Minter just got done authoring 2 of the better defenses in recent Chargers history, the last couple of years, to be quite honest. In 2024, his first as a defensive coordinator, he was 10th best in the NFL in total defense, 9th best in points. In 2025, it was a different situation. He was 24th in total defense and 18th in points allowed. One of the big issues with the Ravens, as far on the defensive side, was the lack of pass rush. They had a really difficult time. Obviously, whenever you have an issue getting after the quarterback, your back-end guys are going to suffer as a result of that. One of the things that the Chargers did exceptionally well this year was get after the passer, and that really helps the guys on the back end, although I do believe that the Chargers have more talented guys on the back end. So as a guy who has been in this system, who is still young in his coaching career, I understand why they would want to bring him in, and I don't mind it.
Yeah, I mean, when I did a little spot for Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens talking about Jesse Minter, and he just said he felt that Zach Orr had gotten the job a little early. Like, back then, there were so many disciples, and it was such a successful scheme that everyone was looking for a piece of that, and now you see those guys all around the league, and instead of going with someone, like, they decided to go with Zach Orr instead of Weaver, basically, at the time, who went left to be Mike McDaniel, offensive or defensive coordinator down in Miami, right? And now has been in this cycle looking for head coaching jobs as well. But yeah, it was weird though too, because like the thing is for Zach Orr, which is like not my favorite candidate, like I understand why they would want to go in the same direction. But weeks 1 through 7 last year, they were just the worst defense in the NFL. And it really was a tale of 2 halves for them, because weeks 1 through 7, 32nd in points per game, 30th in yards per game, 27th in third down conversion percentage. Weeks 8 through 18, 6th in points per game, 17th in yards per game, And then, I mean, they ended up really kind of turning things around, and it was a lot better. But does this help you get Odafe Owe back, right? Going back to the defensive coordinator he got traded from, where he had 0 sacks before getting traded to the Chargers, and then ended up having, including the playoff game, double-digit sacks after getting out to the Chargers. So all in all, this is someone who I understand why he's a candidate. Seems like he could be a pretty strong candidate, knowing the way that these brothers like to share their coaches and keep kind of dipping into those trees with each other. But yeah, 7 seasons under Wink Martindale and Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. A lot of connections there, and makes a lot of sense. But Chargers also lost out on an option defensive coordinator because former Titans defensive coordinator and Ravens coach Denard Wilson was hired by John Harbaugh with the Giants over the weekend. Hard to say how interested the Chargers were, but he was interviewed. Also, a little surprising we haven't seen any internal interviews yet. I thought for sure that we'd see Steve Klinkskill at this point get interviewed. Thought we would get, or at least see Mike Elston get a chance to interview for the job, David, and it is a little surprising we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, two of these guys that have done an exceptional job with their position groups, and you've been able to see like tangible progress. And you've been able to see guys actually improve and grow and get better under their tutelage, which in the past, I don't know we've been able to point to too many different position coaches and be able to say these guys have noticeably gotten better under the leadership and under the teachings of these coaches. That's just one thing you just clearly can't say about Steve Klinkskill and Mike Elston.
No, we know exactly kind of how big of a part they played in Jesse Minter getting the job that he had, which was the most favorable job in this hiring cycle, and also the way that they were able to kind of digest and be able to communicate to the defenders what exactly Jesse Minter wanted, right? Which was such a huge problem under Brandon Staley. And those two guys specifically absolutely deserve a shot. Like if we're going to interview Shane Day, we're going to interview Marcus Brady for offensive coordinator positions. Like what are we doing? Not, trying to give these guys a chance when they could decide to leave with Jesse Minter and go to the Ravens potentially, right? But let's get into probably our last edition of kind of playoff lessons, David, something that I think was very present this weekend, which is just something, a very old adage, something that's pretty cliche. But at the end of the day, I think we learned this weekend, defense wins championships, because one of the defenses that's going to win the Super Bowl is going to have a really, really good squad.
Yeah, they are. And not only does defense win championships, but defense travels as well. And, the Patriots defense did enough against the 3 opponents they played, 16 or fewer points in all 3 of their playoff wins. I mean, that's just getting it done. And we've seen the stat out there with Justin Herbert, like, basically if his defenses score less than 20 points, the Chargers are winning most of those games. So, we know how crucial it is. Obviously, the Chargers had a very good defense. They just couldn't get the offense to get kicking, which is why my last playoff lesson is feed your stars. Make sure that your best players are heavily involved in the game plan. JSN for the Seattle Seahawks, 10 catches, 153 yards. Puka Nacua for the Rams, 9 catches, 165 yards. The Stars were given the ball, and they shined as a result, and their offenses were putting up points because they were getting the ball to their stars.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little different on the other side, because really the Patriots nor the Broncos really have that kind of alpha number 1 receiver. But, that is what it looks like, right? Like, Ladd McConkey, maybe borderline wide receiver 1. Those are guys you just throw it to in any situation, and you're hoping they're going to come down with it and just make it a big-time play. But they also have the advantages of having really good play callers to put them in great situations, which is what the Chargers need. Someone to put their stars into better situations and have Ladd McConkey lead this team in targets like he probably should. But going back to the defense, I mean, a really terrible offensive day in the Patriots-Broncos game, and it ended up being such a defensive slugfest because of the snow. That's something that could happen to you this time of year. You might get into inclement weather where it just becomes the next person to score wins the game, right? And it just becomes that. Having a great defense gets you there, right? And I think even the fact that the Broncos lost by 3 points to the Patriots and only allowed 10 points, that's because their defense. They almost made the Super Bowl. Probably should have made the Super Bowl.
With a backup quarterback.
Right? And if Sean Payton just kicks a field goal early on in that game before the blizzard hits, who knows how that game ends up. But, even the Seahawks-Rams game, a game that turns into a shootout, right? What it came down to was the Seahawks, when everyone was scoring on every drive, getting that stop on 4th down to get the ball back And not only that, the Rams' inability defensively to be able to get off the field once the Seahawks got it back, because basically after letting them get a couple of first downs, the Rams had 25 seconds and no timeouts to try to go get a touchdown. And there was just no chance they had. So even in the shootout games, like there are times you're going to have to be, to keep up and get in those shootouts. And you need an offensive, play caller like a Clint Kubiak or a Sean McVay or Sean Payton even trying to do it for a backup, or even a Josh McDaniels, as an offensive coordinator.
Or how about a Mike McDaniel?
Or Mike McDaniel, you need it, but like the defense is something that's kind of a non-negotiable. I mean, the four teams that were left this weekend all have good defenses. A lot of, coaches off those defenses are going to be hired by other coaches, including potentially by the Chargers. So that's one thing you learn in the playoffs. It's an old cliche for a reason, but defense wins championships. And I mean, that's what we're going to see again when, I think the Seahawks defense is going to throttle the Patriots offense more than likely, in my opinion, as the Seahawks roll them in the Super Bowl. Maybe we'll get a good game. It's not how I see it right now because that team looks like a wagon. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is you guys can contribute to tomorrow's show because it is Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. So you can hit us up for that by hitting us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you want your voice on the show, you can do that at 323-524-7924 and leave your 30-second Chargers voicemail. If you want to get a little bit more than that, you can also be part of the Locked On Everydayer Club for $5 a month. You guys can join and get a ad-free audio version of this podcast, audio with no ads in it, and be a part of our Locked On Chargers Discord channel exclusive. That is something you can get as well. But as always, we'll be with you every day because it is your team every day for free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Buy or Sell Tuesday, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of big ones flying around. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.